the incredibly positive possibilities the future can hold. Once these understandings are fully realized, I think most people will never be able to look at the world in the same way again, and the problems we find as commonplace today will become simply unacceptable, motivating change. Now, there are countless well-intentioned people and activist organizations out there, and they keep popping up like weeds. It's incredible to me how many of these there are, and all admirable and amazing, and they're yelling at the top of their lungs about the rampant problems and injustices in our world. Yet, as you tend to find, very few actually offer any solutions whatsoever. Those that do offer solutions, however, always frame those solutions within the context of the current established system. Very little regard seems to be given to the root structure of our social design. The Venus Project and hence the Zeitgeist movement is different. Our fundamental focus is finding the foundational sources of our social problems and working from that lowest common denominator to create solutions. And when it comes to social corruption, poverty, environmental disregard, human exploitation, and most personal and social turmoil in the world today, an important realization is that most of these problems are not the result of some particular company, some nefarious elite group, or some government legislation. These are symptoms of the foundational problems. And this is the ultimate realization when it comes to how you look at the problems of the world today. There's a massive superstitious basis out there. It's us against them that is extremely poisonous to the development because people are constantly looking for someone else to blame when it's really themselves because they continue to perpetuate the system that creates these things. The real issue is human behavior. And human behavior, which will be addressed in this presentation specifically, is largely created and reinforced by the social patterns required for survival, as necessitated by the social system of the period. We are products of our society, and the fact of the matter is, it is the very foundation of our socioeconomic system and environmental condition which has created the sick culture you see around you. Our current system is based almost exclusively upon human exploitation, resource abuse, and redundant waste. It is simply what our system does. And as far as the infamous they, it is simply another social distortion, culminated and reinforced by our environment. There is no singular they. In Zeitgeist 1, I describe the men behind the curtain to the effect of a specific niche of economics, the ones that control most government policy, and hence those are the banks. The banks have been running things forever. But that is still a product. These are still human beings. We're dealing with negative tendencies. The they syndrome is absolutely obsolete. And next time you hear anybody talk about the they, please try to correct them. It's a religious mentality. Duality is good and evil. The bottom line is that we can spend the rest of our existences stomping on the ants that mysteriously wander out from underneath the refrigerator, setting traps or laws. Or we can get rid of the spoiled food behind it, which is causing the infestation to begin with. And this leads us to part one, monetary dynamics and its consequences. Here's an email I received from a PhD in economics soon after the release of Zeitgeist Addendum. Dear filmmakers, my son presented me the first half of your film last weekend asking me my opinion of the opening section about the fractional reserve lending practices. I'm a PhD certified economist of 12 years and teach macroeconomics. While I always was cognizant of the creation of money and the sale of government bonds, I had never stepped back far enough to see the larger issue your film presented. I find it tremendously disturbing that the creation of value through debt is indeed, by all formal logic, an imposed condition of deficiency, an instigator of public servitude. I'm not sure what shocked me more, the fact that this is true, or the fact that after the many years of education I've had on the subject of economics, this reality never even occurred to me. While it seems counterintuitive to think that a person who should, by all social standards, be an expert in a given field due to their awards and credentials, very often, especially in the purely intellectual arena, such exposure to set established curriculum can really hinder someone's openness in a very powerful way. For you become cognitively blocked from new ideas and realizations, which, if they're outside of the existing framework that you understand, then you have no chance of even realizing it. It's restricting your perception. Jacques Fresco, who dropped out of school at the age of 14, has a great example regarding this perceptual point. During the time that the Wright brothers were building a machine that could fly, expert physicists and engineers were busy writing books about how it was impossible for man to ever fly in any meaningful way. Apparently, the Wright brothers, who were bicycle mechanics, didn't read those books. In other words, creativity will always serve you better than just book smarts. So, with that in mind, let's step back and pose a very simple question about the economic structure we all live in. What are the lowest common denominators required to perpetuate a market economy? 1, human labor must be sold as a commodity in the open market. Outside of investment and inheritance, nearly all money is obtained through income, and income is derived from wages or profit in some form of employment. Therefore, there must always exist a demand for jobs where the economy cannot operate. 2, money must be continuously transferred from one party to another in order to sustain so-called economic growth. This is done through constant or cyclical consumption by virtually everyone in society. Jobs are entirely contingent upon demand for production in some form. If there is no demand for goods and services, then there would be no demand for labor, and hence financial circulation would stop. Needless to say, these two aspects of the system, which of course are intimately connected, are absolutely paramount to the functionality of the system, to the financial system. If either one of them were substantially hindered, the integrity of the economy would be seriously compromised or possibly be made entirely obsolete. So given this reality, let's now hypothetically consider some variables which could put these mechanisms in jeopardy. In the first point, labor sold as a commodity in exchange for money. What if human labor market became unnecessary to the production of goods and services? More specifically, what if automation technology and artificial intelligence became advanced enough to allow for the replacement of perhaps 40%, 50%, 60% of the human labor force? At what point would such displacement, thus unemployment, be considered too much for the system's integrity and put it into question? As far as the second point, the need for cyclical consumption, what if conditions arose where the circulation of money was severely stifled? In other words, what if people simply did not need to continually buy things? What if, hypothetically, it was discovered that through optimized techniques in resource management, design, and production, the most commonly purchased goods could either be made obsolete by larger order renovations, or could have such extreme product efficiency, longevity, and near maintenance-free durability that most items could last a lifetime without replacement or major repair. Of course, this exact idea couldn't be applied to perishable items such as food, but following the same train of thought, what if the cultivation and production of food was in such ease and abundance, through technology obviously, that the supply and demand equation made the value of such items utterly negligible? To put these points in a different way, let's consider the classic economic concept of theory of value. Everything in society theoretically is given a value based on two considerations: the scarcity or availability of the materials used, and the amount of human labor required to produce a good or service. So, if material scarcity, both in terms of resource availability and quality, was not the issue, and human labor was not required to create a good or administer a service, then there would technically be no value. Well, as most of you in this room probably already understand, one of the greatest realizations of Jacques Fresco and the Venus Project, which should be one of the greatest realizations for the whole of humanity at this point in time, is that neither of the scenarios presented are hypothetical. Human beings are indeed being replaced, becoming obsolete, in other words, in the labor force due to advancements in production technology. Likewise, powerful new design advancements in production efficiency and resource management reveal profound possibility of relative global abundance and peak product efficiency. This can be proven through statistical analysis and the inferential extrapolation of historical trends. Obviously, the corporations aren't out there telling you this. You have to dig much deeper to find this information. When it comes to production automation capabilities today specifically, the first thing to consider is a statistical evaluation of a phenomenon called technological unemployment. Technological unemployment, which is the unemployment caused by the use of machines as vehicles of labor, has continually and systematically forced relevant numbers of people out of every single new emerging sector